I used to think heartbreak was just something people talked about to sound dramatic. I had been through a couple breakups before, but none of them hit me like that one. I wasn't prepared for it. I wasn't prepared for her to leave. The worst part? It was over something stupid, something that didn't even make sense when you looked at it from the outside. And yet it changed everything. Her name was Samantha. Sam, for short. We met when I was still figuring things out, working at this dead-end job at a car dealership. You know the kind. The job where you're surrounded by guys who think they're smarter than they really are, and a boss who barely notices you exist until it's time for you to stay late and do his work. But hey, at least I wasn't living in my mom's basement anymore. Sam was different from anyone I'd ever met. She had that carefree attitude, always full of ideas and energy. She talked about dreams, places she wanted to go, things she wanted to see. And me? Well, I was just trying to pay my rent and keep my old, beat-up Chevy running. But I liked her. A lot. We started dating, and it felt easy. We would go out to dive bars on Friday nights, grab burgers at that little diner near my place, and talk for hours about everything and nothing at all. But it wasn't long before the cracks started showing. It's funny how people change when they feel like they've got you locked down. At first, Sam was great. She was fun, spontaneous, a little impulsive, exactly what I needed at the time. But slowly, she started pushing. Not in an obvious way at first. It was subtle. I remember one evening, we were sitting in the car after grabbing dinner at our usual spot. I had my arm around her, and we were listening to the radio. She turned to me with this smile, the kind that always made me feel like I was the luckiest guy alive, and said, Babe, we should really take a trip. Somewhere warm, with a beach and clear water. I want to see the world. I want to live it, not just talk about it. Now, I had no issue with that. I would have loved to take her somewhere like that, but the reality was I could barely afford the gas to get us to the beach an hour away, let alone a tropical paradise. So I did what I always did. I promised her it would happen. I told her I'd work harder, save up, and one day, we'd go on those trips she was dreaming about. I believed it, too. I just needed time. Things are going to get better. They always did. But that wasn't enough for her. I could see it in her eyes, the impatience, the constant pressure to be something I wasn't. Come on, Mark, how hard can it be? You could do this if you just tried harder, she'd say, dropping little hints about how I should be aiming higher, working smarter, taking more risks. And look, I didn't mind ambition. I was ambitious too, but sometimes life doesn't just hand you opportunities, right? Sometimes you have to take what you can get. But for her, it was always about the next big thing, always about the dream. And I felt like I was constantly falling short. It got worse over time. Every time we were together, the conversation started to focus more on the future and less on the present. And it wasn't like I didn't want that future. I did, but I needed to build it step by step. She didn't get that. Then, one night, it came crashing down. We were sitting in my apartment after dinner, just the two of us. It had been a long week for me. Work was exhausting. I barely had time to think straight. And she was on her phone, scrolling through Instagram, looking at pictures of people on their vacations. I could see the wheels turning in her head, and I knew what was coming. Mark, I can't keep waiting around for you to get your shit together, she said, her voice surprisingly calm. I froze. What do you mean? I'm done. I'm done waiting. I can't live like this. You promised me things would change, but nothing's happening. I can't keep doing this. I could feel my heart rate spike. Samantha, come on, we'll figure it out. I told you I just need a little time. She didn't even look up from her phone. I can't wait for someday. I need it now. I want to live my life, not sit around waiting for you to catch up. That's when it hit me. It wasn't just about the trips. It wasn't about her wanting a vacation. It was about everything I wasn't giving her. The life she imagined for herself didn't include me anymore. Not the version of me that was scraping by, trying to make ends meet. I'm sorry, Sam, but I don't have it right now. I'm working on it, but I can't just. Right? She interrupted, her voice cold now. You're always working on it. You've been saying that for 2 years. 2 years, Mark. I've given you more than enough time. The silence between us grew heavy, thick with things unsaid. I wanted to beg her to stay. I wanted to tell her that I loved her and that I could change, that I could be the guy she needed me to be. But the truth was I wasn't sure I could. I wasn't sure I even knew how to. And then she stood up, grabbed her bag, and walked out. That was it. Done. No fighting, No yelling, just the door closing behind her. I remember sitting there for a long time, just staring at the spot where she'd been. The apartment felt empty, colder. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe I had lost something that I would never get back. It's strange how life moves on even when you don't feel ready for it. That night, after Sam walked out, I remember sitting there on the couch in the dark, letting the weight of her words sink in. She was gone. It was over. There were no dramatic phone calls or angry outbursts, just a quiet, clean break. I could still hear the sound of her footsteps fading away in my mind. The door clicked shut, and suddenly everything felt smaller. I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't that. I thought there'd be some big realization on my part, something profound, like an epiphany that would make me feel better about the situation. But all I felt was hollow. The first few weeks were the worst. I threw myself into work, hoping that if I just kept busy, I wouldn't have to think about her. But the thing is, that's never how it works, right? The more you try to bury stuff, the more it pops up. And it didn't help that I saw her all over social media. Her posts, her stories, photos of her with friends, smiling, looking happy. It felt like a slap in the face, especially when I saw her talking about how she was finally free and how everything happens for a reason. You know, the typical motivational crap. It was like she was trying to convince herself more than anyone else. But it wasn't the post that got me, honestly. It was the fact that every time I saw her having fun, living the life she wanted, I couldn't help but wonder if I'd failed her. If I wasn't good enough. That maybe she was right, that I was too stuck in my own little world to be the guy she needed me to be. I threw myself into my job even harder. I worked overtime. I took every commission I could get, and eventually it started paying off. Little by little, I was able to save some money. My car broke down for the third time that year, and I decided, screw it, I was getting a new one. Not a brand new, shiny car or anything, but a decent used one. A step up from the Chevy I'd been driving for years. It was the first real change I had made since she left. It felt good. I remember sitting in the driver's seat, turning the key in the ignition, feeling the engine purr like a well-oiled machine. I'd never been someone who cared much about cars, but that moment felt like a win. It wasn't a beach vacation or anything, but it was progress. I could feel the pieces of my life starting to come together, slowly but surely. Then, the weirdest thing happened. About 6 months after Sam had left, I was at a bar with some friends, unwinding after a long week. I don't even remember what we were talking about, but I pulled out my phone to check the time, and I saw a notification. It was from Instagram. Samantha had liked one of my photos. Now, I didn't think much of it first. It wasn't like she'd send me a message or anything, just a like. But then, I checked my feed. It wasn't just a single like. She had gone through my posts and liked several of them, including the ones from the trips I had taken over the last few months. Trips I had made on my own, just me and a couple of friends, or sometimes just me. And suddenly, I felt a knot in my stomach. I wasn't angry, not exactly. I don't think I even felt betrayed. But there was something about it that didn't sit right with me. I thought about her saying that she couldn't wait for some day, how she had made it clear that I wasn't enough because I didn't have the life she wanted. And now, here she was liking my vacation photos. I've been to a couple of cool spots. Hawaii, New Orleans, the Grand Canyon. And I had been doing it without her like she wanted. But the whole thing fell off. Like she was watching me move on, and I was fine with it, but it was clear she wasn't. I stared at the notification for a long time, thinking she'd seen me move forward, get a new car, start going on these trips, doing all the things that seemed so out of reach back when we were together. And now, she was liking my photos. What did that mean? Was she trying to tell me something? I could feel my anger building a little, but it wasn't the kind of anger where you want to scream and yell. It was more like a slow burn, a realization that things weren't as neat as I had wanted them to be. There was no clean closure, no one to blame, just a weird mix of feelings. I wanted to confront her about it, ask her what the hell she was thinking, but what would that accomplish? I could already guess what she'd say. I didn't mean anything by it, or I was just being nice. And even though I could see right through that, I didn't want to waste my energy. I had more important things to do now, things I could control. So I did what anyone would do. I stalked her Instagram. Yeah, I know, pathetic, right? But I had to see, had to know if she was really doing as well as it seemed. She was still living in the same apartment, still working at the same cafe. There was nothing wrong with that, per SC. But when you've seen someone want more, when you've watched them dream big and complain about how life is so unfair, it stings to see them still stuck in the same place. It was like I had broken out of a cage, and she was still stuck inside. It wasn't that I was better than her, or that I was trying to rub it in her face. I wasn't. But it was hard not to feel that way, especially after everything she said about how I wasn't doing enough. I closed the app, tossed my phone on the bar counter, and turned to my friend Chris. Dude, I don't know. I think Sam's watching me, like for real. It's weird. He just laughed, taking a swig of his beer. Man, what does it even matter? You've moved on. You're doing your thing. She's still stuck. You know that. I know. I said, my voice flat. But it's just the timing, you know? It's like she's waiting for me to come back and apologize for not taking her to the Bahamas or whatever. Chris raised an eyebrow. Bro, are you seriously thinking about that? Let go. You're not the same guy you were when she dumped you. Yeah, I knew he was right, but it didn't stop the feelings from creeping back. I spent the next few days stewing over that Instagram situation. I told myself I was done thinking about Sam, that I'd moved on, but every time I checked my feed, there she was liking my pictures, leaving little comments here and there. It wasn't even the comments that bugged me. It was the fact that she was looking. She was paying attention to my life, and honestly, I didn't know how I felt about that. A few days after my mini social media investigation, I went on another trip. This time, I was in Miami. It wasn't a big deal, just a weekend getaway with a couple of friends to blow off some steam. But as I sat on the beach, feeling the sun burn the back of my neck and listening to the waves crash, I couldn't shake the feeling that everything had come full circle. 2 years ago, I would have given anything to be able to afford trips like this for Sam, to show her that I could give her what she wanted. Now, I was doing it for myself. Alone. But that's what I wanted, right? I took a picture of the beach, captioned it another day, another beach, and posted it. I didn't think much of it. I wasn't trying to rub anything in Sam's face. I was just living. But when I checked my notifications later, there it was. A like from Sam. Another one. And this time, I couldn't help myself. I clicked on her profile. Same old stuff. Same apartment, same job, same small circle of friends. No big trips. No adventures. No sign of any change, any growth. It was like she was stuck in some endless loop. It wasn't a smug feeling I had. No, it was a hollow one. I didn't feel superior or proud of where I'd gotten. I just felt sad. Sad for her because I knew that she was the one who had pushed me to go after what I wanted, and now she was stuck with a life that she couldn't stop complaining about. But that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part came a few weeks later when I ran into her. I was back home, sitting at the local bar where I usually went to unwind after work. It was one of those places where everyone knows your name, where the bartender pours your usual before you even ask for it. I was halfway through a beer when I saw her. She was sitting at the other end of the bar with a couple of friends, laughing too loudly, looking exactly the same. Same blonde hair, same high-pitched laugh, same little smile that used to drive me crazy. At first, I told myself I wouldn't go over. I'd moved on. I was better off without her. So why would I want to dig up the past? But then, for some reason, I found myself walking toward her, beer in hand. I don't even know why. Maybe it was because I wanted some kind of closure. Or maybe I was just curious about how she was doing. Whatever it was, I sat down next to her. Hey, I said, trying to sound casual. She turned to me, her eyes widening slightly when she saw me. Mark, she said, her voice surprisingly soft. Wow, it's been a while. I nodded. Yeah, it has. I glanced at her friends, who were now looking at me like they didn't quite know whether I was a threat or just some random guy. How have you been? Oh, same old, she replied, shrugging. Still working at the cafe, still trying to figure things out. Right? I set my tone neutral. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of pretending like I cared. And, you still living in the same place? She nodded. Yeah, still there. It's fine, I can't complain. There was an awkward silence between us for a moment. I could feel the tension building, but it wasn't the same tension that existed between us when we were together. This was different. It felt like we were both pretending to be comfortable with each other, pretending that nothing had changed. So, I said, taking a swig of my beer, how's everything with you? You traveling yet? I wasn't trying to be rude. but I couldn't help it. I had to ask. She looked down at her drink for a second before meeting my eyes. Not yet. I, I've been busy, trying to make things work. It's just hard sometimes. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to tell her how hard it had been for me too, how I had to work my ass off just to get to a point where I could afford a trip without breaking the bank. But I didn't. I just nodded and took another sip of my beer. We talked for another 10 minutes, but it was like the conversation had no real substance. She didn't seem interested in hearing about my trips or my new car. She just smiled, nodding along like she was waiting for it all to end. And that's when I realized she hadn't changed. She was still the same person who thought the world owed her something. Still the same person who thought that a little bit of effort could get her everything she wanted without having to work for it. It wasn't that I was angry at her anymore. I was just disappointed. Disappointed that, after everything she had said to me, after pushing me to get better, she hadn't made any real changes in her own life. It was like she was waiting for someone else to come along and give her what she wanted, just like she had with me. When I finished my beer, I stood up to leave. "It was good seeing you, Sam," I said, my voice steady. She smiled weakly, like she was trying to convince herself that everything was fine. "Yeah, you too," she replied, though I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. I walked out of the bar, my mind spinning. I had always believed that I wasn't good enough for her, that I was the one who had failed, who hadn't lived up to her expectations. But seeing her there, still stuck, still dreaming about the same things that never seemed to happen, it changed everything for me. It made me realize that she was the one who had missed out. A week passed after I saw Sam at the bar, and honestly, I was surprised at how little it bothered me. I expected it to hit harder. I thought I'd feel something, regret, anger, maybe even some nostalgia. But all I felt was a quiet sense of relief. I had dodged a bullet. I had grown, moved forward, and become someone who was living life on his own terms, not someone else's. I didn't need her validation anymore. It felt like an odd sense of closure that I hadn't known I needed. In a weird way, it was like the universe was showing me that everything had happened for a reason. I had spent so much time doubting myself, thinking I wasn't enough for her, that I had failed. But seeing her still stuck, still complaining about the things I had worked so hard to fix in my own life, made me realize the truth. The problem wasn't me. It was her. The worst part, though, was the realization that maybe I had never been the one who wasn't enough for her. Maybe she just wasn't the right one for me. She was so focused on the idea of a perfect life, the vacations, the big house, the fancy car, that she forgot how to appreciate the journey. She couldn't see the value in hard work and delayed gratification. She wanted everything now, but she wasn't willing to put in the effort to get it. And that's when it hit me. I had been chasing her dream, not my own. So I started chasing mine, and it felt good. I didn't need a fancy vacation to prove anything to anyone anymore. Hell, the last trip I took was to Yellowstone, camping for a weekend with a couple of friends. No five-star hotels or five-course meals, just a tent, some beers, and a damn good time. That was enough for me. I was building my own version of success, and it wasn't about showing off for anyone. It was about doing what made me happy. As for Sam, well, a few months later, I found myself scrolling through Instagram again, and I saw that she had posted a picture of her new boyfriend. It wasn't like I was hoping for any kind of reaction out of me. Hell, I wasn't even mad. But there it was. They were in some tourist trap, doing the same damn things we used to talk about, with the same fake smiles plastered on their faces. And for a moment, I realized something. I had dodged a bullet. It wasn't that I was glad she was with someone else. It was that I had let go of the idea that I needed her to be happy. That was the difference between us. She was still chasing someone else's version of happiness, but I was finally content with mine. I couldn't even bring myself to care about her anymore. It was just done. A few days later, I was sitting at the bar with Chris again, watching a baseball game. The same place, the same old routine. But now it felt different. I was different. "You ever think about Sam?" Chris asked, taking a sip of his drink. I looked up from a game, thinking for a second. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Not anymore." Chris raised an eyebrow. "You sure? You don't seem pissed about her anymore. You've moved on, huh?" I chuckled, swirling my drink in my glass. "Yeah, man. She's still stuck and I'm doing fine." Chris smirked. "That's what I like to hear." "Hell, You're probably doing better than her anyway. Definitely, I said, raising my glass to him. But you know what? It's not about that anymore. It's about living my life, not trying to prove something to her or anyone else. Chris leaned back in his chair, nodding. That's the spirit. Skreoing. You got this. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I had done what I needed to do. I had worked for it, earned it, and finally I was in a place where I didn't have to look back. I was free. Free of her expectations. Free of the constant comparison. I was my own person now. And for the first time, I was at peace with that.